Okay, hi everyone. Again, this one's going to be a much quicker video than the last one. The last one was about 20 something minutes. This one should only take us about 5 or 6. Want to look at tone. So I'm just going to share my screen with you again in order for you to see what's going on. And then we're going to jump straight into the presentation that I have here on tone. So tone is essentially the it's the key to illusion of light. The more that you use tones in your image, then the more you're going to have this illusion that there's light there and that there's depth within your scene. So later on I'm going to get you to do a small mini task where you're using essentially silhouettes of different tones in order to create a mini sort of landscape. And you can do as many of them as you like, but I'd like you to at least do one. I'm pretty sure, Ben, you've already done a couple of these. I think I saw you doing them last week. So tone refers to the amount of lightness or darkness in an area or in an image. So you can have a super bright white is the lightest tone that you can use, and you've got various shades of grey all the way through to the deepest blacks that you'll find in shadows and silhouettes. Looking at any image, I think this is why when we had Luke in last week and he was talking to you about designing your carts and then grayscaling them first before you started adding colour in, the colour kind of comes second. That's because we're much better as amateur artists of drawing in black and white first and then adding the colour in afterwards, because when you try and just add colour from the get-go, you're not really thinking about value, you're not really thinking about the tones of the actual object. If you're looking at just this apple, you're not thinking about how dark certain sections are when you're drawing it, you're just using the flat colour to begin with. Some of you will be, but most of you probably won't. So looking at it and understanding that there's 8 variations of tone within this entire image is probably something that most of you didn't even consider. So looking at the rules for tone, essentially you can add in tints to make things lighter or whiter. You can add in shades to make things darker. So jumping into Photoshop for a second, I've got an image of red on here. And I've got 2 layers. I've got a white layer and a black layer. They're absolutely covering over the red, but I've got them at the moment set on 0 opacity. So if I look at the white first and start bringing up the opacity on that, obviously it's going to start changing the tone of the color and the tone of the image. So it's making it lighter, because obviously I'm bringing in elements of white. Same goes if I started using black. So if we're on the black one, I'm bringing in shades now. So I'm starting to shade this image with various tones. Okay, so that's what a tone is. So coming back to our remove these, because I'm going to need this space very soon. Perhaps I can get rid of them completely now I've shown you that. So looking back on our rules that we're going through here, the uses of tone tend to be in order to show either depth, and not just in depth in terms of landscapes and great big massive sort of areas. Depth in terms of just this image here of an ear. If you were to remove these bits of black that are running through in certain areas, the 3D feel to it would just be lost. Okay, that's fairly simple to understand. Looking at it in terms of landscapes, like we've mentioned before, I think we mentioned this with perspective as well, where you've got the desaturation of color and the sort of the lighter shades further away from you, because by the time that light manages to travel from hitting the object that you're looking at all the way back to your eye, it's a long distance, and therefore the light pollution changes the amount of saturation, the amount of color that you get coming through. One thing that I think I do this quite a lot with many of the students when they're designing something is to turn it black and white. And if you turn it black and white and you still feel like you can see the depth and you can feel like things are closer to you or further away, then you know you've made an image look a little better than if you didn't do that. So really great little tip is just to, whatever you're drawing, just flip it to black and white every now and again. Just put a layer over the top and add a black and white over the top of it, and you'll be able to see whether you're fulfilling those sort of rules of tone. Tone can also not just be used for kind of showing distance, but also be used to highlight certain areas. So looking at the color version of this painting, obviously we want to look here because that's the lightest section and it's next to some very dark sections. And then this little guy in red over in the top corner over there. Yet looking at it in terms of just the tonal value, yes, that section stands out to us, but he doesn't stand out quite so much. And that's because he's basically he's a very similar tone to the background. If you look at him here, his shirt and the actual piece of land behind him, almost the same tone, which means it doesn't really pop for you. The only reason it pops is because of that color. The last thing to kind of talk about with this image here is, we were looking at not only rule of thirds, which is where the horizon line is on this, and also the most important section of this thing is here. You'll probably find that if we put the Fibonacci in there, it probably ends up at this point here. And this is a painting. This isn't concept art. This is something that's been very cleverly thought out. He hasn't been able to digitally move things around to make sure they're sitting in the right place. He's drawn them there in the first place. So it's a really, really impressive painting. The last thing is that we've also got these the triangle working in here. So we're looking at this point down here, this very, very bright sort of section, looking over towards this tree that's fading off over into that way. There's not really much to pull you back over to this guy over here, except for notice how most of the branches are up here. Okay, so that's forcing you to kind of almost make a curve. So you've gone from here, you're following the tree, and you're coming up to here. So that's a curve there in the first place. Where do you go from there? Well, you kind of latch back onto this tree over here in the distance. Again, we're looking at, spoke about perspective earlier. This is much bigger than this one over there. It's helping you pull around, and then we're coming back to this dude over here in the bottom corner. Okay, so rules of perspective are being used quite clearly there. And if we were to look at how artists make things pop, here we've got things like you've got the head, the hands, and the painting. Now, those three things are all doing something very, very unique to the rest of the painting, and it's to do with the tone again. So looking over at the black and white, like I said, turn your image black and white every now and again, and you'll start to see things. So turning this image black and white, it becomes abundantly clear that the hands, the head, and the painting in the background have all got very contrasting tones compared to the things around them. And it forces your eye to look at those three objects. Okay, so jumping into 3D, sorry, not 3D Studio Max, jumping into Photoshop. What I want you to do is to create your own mini landscape. Okay, I'm going to draw one quite quickly here, and you'll notice as I draw, I'm going to use darker shades closer towards me and lighter shades further away. Okay. So I'm just going to mute the mic whilst I'm doing this so that I can concentrate a little more without having to worry about you guys listening. Okay, so I'm going to pull myself. Oh, I don't think I can actually at this point. So I can. There it is. Okay, so there's a really quick image created just using silhouette drawings and using various shades and tones in order to create an effect that makes it feel as if this um, landscape has certain sections that are further away than others, okay, with a little blot of clouds at the top corner in the end. So I'd like you to have a go at doing one of these and then just quickly explain what tone is in your eyes and how it can be used to your benefit in order to give the illusion of depth and distance in an image. Okay. So they're the two things that I'd like you to concentrate on over the next, well, over the Christmas holiday. I don't mind when you do them. They will be assessed, obviously, with the rest of your blog posts when you complete them, but that won't be until the end of the module. So there's no super rush to do them. Ideally, do them if you can over the Christmas holiday. If not, at least do the writing side of it if you haven't got Photoshop at home. Okay, so there are the two things that I wanted to talk to you about today. I'm sorry I couldn't do an online class in terms of you guys sat there watching me doing it live, but hopefully this is enough to get you by. Okay, so have a lovely, lovely Christmas, everybody, and I will see you next year. Okay, ciao.